Welcome everyone to our June 10 meeting. Appreciate everybody being available. We obviously are virtual again, but we will be talking about that among other things today. As I think I mentioned in the email I sent to everybody on Sunday, our speaker today was not available as originally thought and scheduled. So I wanted to take advantage of the fact this was all on our calendars to sort of set some things out here, because it's mid-June already, and before we know it, summer will be over, and then we have the final report due November 30, and so there's a fair amount to get done at this point. I have to say the interim report was thorough in a lot of ways, which I think is great, and I'm glad that we were able to make the recommendations we did. There are some things that I think the commission agrees will need to be followed up on, and we will do that. And so I thought it'd be helpful to try to figure out what else we need to tackle. I think we need some new subcommittees. I think the work of a couple of subcommittees is done or just about done. And we've got a lot of external stakeholder information coming our way, and I want to be sure we're ready to assess that. We've got some follow-up issues with people we've already heard from. I'll call it the internal or the county stakeholders, the county consultants. To the extent we need anything else from them, I want to be sure we get that lined up now. And I guess where I'm really going with all this is there was quite a bit of activity with respect to the interim report, sort of right up to the last minute. And the difficulty, if you will, or the challenge, let's put it that way, of a November 30 due date is that the Thanksgiving holiday is in there, and there are some other things, and everybody's got other things going on. So I just like to have I'd like to see if we can have all of our inquiry work done and our information in by the end of September, so that we can really concentrate the last 60 days, really 45 days, to get the draft done of the final report by have that done before the Thanksgiving holiday, so there won't have to be any interruption or emergency commission meetings if we can avoid it. And I know because I serve with great people that we'll do whatever we have to do, but I'd like to see if we can try to avoid the fire drill at the end of near the end of our term, if you will. So that's my welcome. And let's move on. It's actually not on the agenda, but we need to approve minutes. The minutes have been distributed. PETA had some corrections that were made in the online versions. Those have been made. So let's start with the April 8 minutes. Are there any corrections to those minutes?
Move approved.
I'm sorry.
I said move approval.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like we have a second there, and so everyone agrees. Great. April 29 again, as distributed and corrected. Any additional corrections? All right. Hearing none. I think the modern way is that I remark that they're approved, and if no one objects or offers another correction, I think we're good. So now that's April 29. So now let's do May 20 again, as distributed and corrected. Any additional corrections? So hearing none, then the May 20 minutes are also approved. Thank you. And when everybody gets a gold star just for serving on the commission, PETA gets an extra one because her copy editing skills are unparalleled. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so first item up on commission business are what I'm going to call the subcommittee's topic. We identified in the interim report a number of next steps. And just as a quick reminder, we talked about looking at organizational structure, contracting processes, specifically concerning splitting. We have, of course, stakeholder input. That's the survey and our public meeting, and we'll get to those in a minute. Sustainability, and today's speaker will be the speaker on the 28th of June, the Baltimore County's new Chief Sustainability Officer. We're looking at best practices. The construction subcommittee still had a number of things that it wanted to look at: standard contract form, purchasing for capital improvement contracts and county projects, contract administration and vendor payment, and architectural engineering procurement method. We also talked about a couple of things in what we refer to in the interim report as our procurement chronology, and I think the Commission's done a good job of getting through items 1 through 4, but item 5 is the post-selection process, required approvals and challenges to award. And I've had some input. A couple people have suggested that we be helpful if the Commission could take a look at what happens in 2 respects. One, when a protest is filed, what are the standards by which that protest is evaluated and determined? And the second piece, and I know Dan is familiar with this, on the state side, when there's a protest on the state side, the Board of Public Works has a regulation in place that says that typically when there's been a protest or an appeal of a protest, the award of the contract by the Board of Public Works is delayed until the end of the protest or the appeal, unless the failure to award the contract immediately would impair substantial state interests. And from time to time, the Board of Public Works determines that it just can't wait any further given the nature of the procurement and whatever other circumstances might be there, and they will go ahead and award the contract. I don't think there's anything like that either way on the county side, whether that means someone who wants to protest runs to the circuit court to try to get an injunction of some sort. But there's been a suggestion that there could be more clarity, and that the Commission's recommendations for what happens in the event of a protest would be helpful. And I was going to hope that Dan and Scott, who did such a great job on the code revisions, would allow me to work with them on that, because I think that's an interesting part for that subcommittee to take a look at.
Bill, can I ask you a question about that?
Of course.
Of course, state also has the State Board of Contract Appeals, and I don't know where that fits. So just mention that for completion.
No, that is absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And so the question is whether one holds up or not. And there are some policy reasons why procuring agencies and parties who have been recommended for award want to just move forward with a contract. Of course, protesters don't want that to occur. But you're absolutely right, Dan. That does, the Board of Contract Appeals is there and has exclusive original jurisdiction for state bid protests. So how all that works and how it might work or not work in the county. Anyway, someone asked if we could take a look at that, and I think it's a worthwhile thing to do. And then just to round out, and then I guess that same field of thought, then we've got questions about debriefings and complaints about procurement process and the like. So looking at all that, the sort of post-selection, but not quite at contract award, what happens there, and we'll tighten that up. And then last and certainly not least, In our next steps, we had joint cooperative purchases with other jurisdictions, intergovernmental cooperative purchasing agreements, so-called piggyback arrangements, coordination with other agencies and governmental entities. And so that's another piece. And I think a subcommittee would work there. And so a new subcommittee would work there. And then we had some, there had been some recommendations that had been made that we did not have consensus on at the time of the interim report. And several of those came out of the MBE, WBE Small Business Subcommittee, and we need to get our arms around that. One of those may require some legal research, another may be prompt payment provisions, may be a logistical issue, but as a commission, we said we would revisit those, and we will do that. Yes, Dan?
On the intergovernmental,
Yeah.
if it's possible, could we add something to require coordination with the Baltimore County Public School System, which, you know, consumes half, from the taxpayer point of view, half the dollars we give to the county goes to the schools. As far as I can tell, they operate their own procurement. I don't know that to the extent there's coordination or overlap, or even what tools are available to the county council, like a Councilman Catch or the county executive, to say, if you want this money, there's strings attached, just like federal government gives money to the state with strings attached about certain things. I don't know if anything is possible there, but they kind of operate in their own sphere. We saw some of the challenges when they had the cybersecurity attack there. And they kind of seem to go their own way. But from a taxpayer point of view, it's all fungible money. It's all dollars I give to the county. I want to be sure that there is well spent. But the county, you know, half the county budget, right? Something like that goes right directly to the school system. So I don't know if there's any way we can tackle that or raise it or just ask the question, or what would need to change, state law, local law, I don't know.
Yeah, Dan, you would need to change state law. As a council, we are not permitted to attach strings to an appropriation with the Board of Education. Now, I do understand. I know that we do some buying with them of certain items, but you know, during the past session, there were a couple bills in the General Assembly that would have given the council and county executive more say over what happens to the money that goes to the school system. And we could talk about it another time, but there are some real problems. And as you said, they came out over the last 3-4 months with the cyber incident. And over the past couple of there was, you know, our superintendent went to jail and et cetera. And I know that I and others on the council wanted to be able to take a look at the finances of the school system. We were absolutely we were forbidden from doing it. Could not do it. So I don't know if the commission would be willing or to take a look at this and possibly make some legislative suggestions that the county pursue certain pieces of legislation on the state level. I think that might not be a bad idea at all, because you know, this commission, we need to operate in such a fashion that we're going to get the best price for what we buy. And yeah, but anyhow, I would like the commission to think about that, the possibility of supporting some kind of legislation.
Peter, yes, Peter.
Thank you. I was reminded in looking over the minutes that one of the other things that we talked about studying was the issue of owner-controlled insurance programs and how that could be problematic for businesses and contractors.
Yes, you're right. And I think that's actually listed in the report. Thank you. Well, I think going back to Dan's comments, it is. I think we've gotten some of the answer from Councilman Koch, and that is to the extent that there's state law that plays a somewhat preventative role. I think it'd be helpful to gather the information. I don't know whether this commission is going to be, I don't know if we can solve the problem, but I think we can certainly point out that, as Dan notes, that there's a lot of money that's spent on schools, and that again, if the commission agrees that it's ripe for a deeper look and potential change in legislation. So we can certainly look at making that kind of a recommendation. I think. I don't know that we can solve the problem otherwise, but Dan, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you're not going to have much problems taking a look at the education budget that the council gets. It's 13 pages prescribed by state law. It's 13 numbers, and under each number is what the money can be, how it can be spent on what. But we have no role into how it's spent. That guidance is simply for the Board of Education. So it's 13 pages, and all these things the money can be spent on. That's it. That is it. So, okay.
All right. So, in terms of new subcommittees, it seems to me that it would make sense to have one for best practices, one for this post-selection process to handle the fifth and last stage, if you will, of procurement. I think joint cooperative purchasing is another one. Construction set out for itself in the interim report a number of things that it intends to look at. Sustainability, again, our next speaker is going to talk to us about sustainability, and there may be some additional things we'll want to say about that. I know Dan has some ideas about that as well, but I think we ought to be able to get our arms around the sustainability piece reasonably quickly so that we can have a good idea going into the summer, again, subject to survey and subject to public comment. But I guess my point is I don't know that there is a lot more for that subcommittee to do. And with respect to MBE, there are a lot of good substantive recommendations that we made as a commission, thanks to the work of the subcommittee. We've got a couple of issues that need to be resolved that are sort of left over, if you will, pre-interim report. I guess the next question is whether that subcommittee wants to hear further from Dr. Ramsey, or whether the commission would like to hear further from Dr. Ramsey. I understand her contract scope for a contract will allow for further conversations with the entire commission or a subcommittee. And I don't know if we're prepared to answer that today, but I would like, and maybe we are, but we should be focused on that. And if so, we'll want to be sure we get her on schedule, if you will. So any other, thoughts on additional subcommittees? Is something I'm missing? Too many subcommittees? Not enough? suggestions? Stunned silence. Stunned silence. Okay. Well, on the so if we were to add a best practices committee. Oh, and I guess the other thing is in terms of let's go back. The first part of the interim report in terms of the subcommittee reports was the purchasing office. And again, extensive recommendations made. I think what I will do is the heads of the current subcommittees, I would ask that they survey their members, take a look at their notes, and let the rest of us know what other things they think might need to be done. And I would ask Commissioner Chambers if she wouldn't mind taking a particular look at having. We need Dr. Ramsey to come back. Whether you'd like, if there's anything you'd like her to come back and specifically address with the subcommittee. And I'll ask the rest of the commissioners who aren't on that subcommittee if they'd like to have her come back to address the entire commission. But I'd ask each subcommittee chair to sort of assess what they've done, what else they might want to look at, who else they might want to hear from the county, or from any other of the internal stakeholders. So again, get that scheduled earlier rather than later. I'll send around a list of this couple subcommittees I mentioned, and ask for volunteers or encourage certain commissioners to be on a subcommittee. And our newest commissioner, if any of those sound of particular interest to you, that would be great. We can get you signed up for that. So I'll circulate those. Let's get those populated within the next week or so, and we can. I think it'd be. I'll put this in an email. I think it would be helpful if people could respond to me and tell me what else they think needs to be done. Well, then we'll get an outline and we'll share with everybody in terms of the subcommittee work, because that I worked well last time, and I think we'll need to rely on the subcommittee work again for purposes of the final report. I'm on B3. Well, I'm actually on B, which is with respect to county personnel. We talked about Dr. Ramsey already. The efficiency assessment consultant, any other internal stakeholder resources. Again, to the extent anybody has anything on their mind right this moment as to what else we might need from any of those sources or resources. Yes, Commissioner Blackie.
Yeah, it seems to me some of our recommendations and really got stuck with whether or not it's it's legal, and I wonder if we could get help from one of the county attorneys or something that reviews these contracts, that has a good feel for what where we are. Because I don't want to see us wasting a lot of time on something that we know is not, it can't happen anyway, because it's, right now it's not, there's no legal process for it.
Sure. Elizabeth, I assume somebody's available who could help us with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it might make sense to put a request, like a formal-ish request from the commission in writing to the county attorney, just so it's clear.
One of the issues we just talked about earlier, Philip, was the issue with the bid protest. I think that I would think that would be fairly well defined already in the purchasing and in the contracts. So I'm not sure if there's a lot we have to do with that, because most agencies have a whole process for bid protest. The state, and and maybe Steve would know better than I, because Department of Public Works has their process for bid protest.
Steve?
Yes, the process is well-defined and has been tested numerous times. So there are some documents which document that. I don't recall whether they're part of the purchasing manual or just sort of part of documented practice, at least from the public works side. But I know law was involved in all those activities. So I'm sure that can be pulled out and distributed to the commission members.
I mean, I may have been confused. I was thinking this was something that was in the more gray area space that I know bubbled up in one of the subcommittees. That's where I was suggesting a request for some clarification versus something that we know exists, we could just share.
Yeah, I think I think there are two parts. Well, I mean, he can speak for himself, but I think there are two parts to it. One would be the you know, what you've just referred to as sort of the gray areas. And then the other part is this question of regarding process and Steve, I don't doubt you at all on the DPW piece. I think though when you're outside the public works arena, it may not be quite as clear. So, but that inquiry is, I think, to Susan Dubin, just, you know, what are the standards? What happens when there's a protest, and what's the effect on the contracting process? Does it slow it down? Do you wait? What occurs? And what is the standard? And if there's no stated standard by which a protest is judged, what, if any, risk does that put the county at for having a non-meaningful process? So we can certainly do that. What I would say, Pete, and anyone else who would like, if you draft up the legal issue, and then we'll get it teed up, have the commission review it or them, and then we'll send it off formally as Elizabeth suggests. And I've made a note here that we ought to let's get the DPW piece and then the non-DPW piece for the protest process, if you will, so we can nail that down.
Bill,
Yes.
I agree. Just because we have a process doesn't mean that it meets our current expectations in terms of transparency and equity, et cetera. One of the non-procurement per se issues that came up in our discussion, and I'll forward this with other comments I might have, is the law office looking at how to move the utilities to require minority business women enterprises as part of the contracting. And at the time, Sue Dubin said that the law office would need to confirm whether it should be an MOU, a contract, or executive order, or what.
Great. Let's definitely get a follow up on that. Thank you. The efficiency assessment, our last meeting, we heard from one of the folks running that. And as I understand it, Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, please, the final report of the efficiency assessment, folks, I think is in August, due in August. Am I right about that?
Roughly, yes. At the moment, it's August. If it's any later, it wouldn't be much later, and it wouldn't definitely not run past the term for this commission.
Because there may be some overlap. I'm thinking about fleet management, and I expect they'll have some comments about purchasing process, although I don't know if their dive is as deep as what we're doing. But I think it makes sense to the extent before their final report is issued, to the extent we can have a look, or at least a sense of where they are on that, because I'm again, I don't want to leave sorting out fleet management, which I think is in the executive order. I don't want to leave that till October. I don't want to over rely on them. On the other hand, we've
Mhm.
got plenty of other things to do. So if they've covered things, we think there's some gaps or some other things we want to look at more deeply, we can, but we just need to keep an eye
So-
on that.
So I think the timing, once again, should work because they are providing their next set of recommendations this month. The CE will review them on June 29th. So we should have, I have not seen any recommendations to date around fleet management, for example, but I do expect it will come through in this next iteration. So that would leave some time in July, perhaps, for this group to see those recommendations, as well as some thinking in my head, which ones also overlap with the commission. But we can do a little crosswalking of that, and would think sharing with this commission sometime in July would make sense.
Okay.
And
So then the other part before we leave agenda item 2B is just the whole additional internal stakeholder resources. Again, I think we've already talked about that, which is if the subcommittee chairs would go back, look at their notes, look at the interim report, and see if there's anything else we need. I think PETA and others have already identified things we may need from the county law office, but anything else, any other data? I know Scott had a number of questions, just to get some statistics and some data about MB and some other things. I don't know if those have been answered to your satisfaction yet or the subcommittee satisfaction, but if, again, I just ask everybody to go reassess so we can line up what we need and then we can get it scheduled and get it in here. Anything else on the follow-up with what I'm follow-up county information resources, or shall we move to the next item?
Real quick, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So when we had some of our subcommittee meetings before, we reached out to some staff members within Public Works to have some discussions. Yeah, I got that approved through their director. We're going to need that again, as well as somebody from law. Should I, being that was approved before, should I go through official channels again and ask, or just reach out to that person directly since it was approved previously, assuming they can sit in one of our meetings again in the future? I'm assuming that's the case. Do you agree?
I'm a big one for asking forgiveness later, but maybe Elizabeth ought to answer that question.
yeah, I would just ask Steve if you would copy DeAndrea on whatever asks, even if it's a meeting invite of staff in DPW.
Very good. Same thing with the law office. I think we're going to need Sue Dubin in one of our meetings as well to just have a conversation about the construction contract. So I'll email you, Phil, that just, I guess you'll send something officially through the law office just for, again.
Yeah, I think that would be
question for-
helpful, Steve.
Certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, unless there's anything else, we'll move to item 2C, external stakeholder information resources. So there are several aspects. So let's talk first about our public comment meeting. When we last met, I said I would survey the commission to see what I could find out about people's willingness to meet in person. And I've heard from, there are 8 of us who have responded, all of whom are fully vaccinated, and I think willing to meet in person, assuming an appropriately sized and ventilated room. And assuming everybody is vaccinated, or if not vaccinated, masked. Obviously, I think the June meeting will also be virtual, but we've talked about before, and we can obviously revisit it. Nothing is written in stone yet, but we've talked about for the public comment meeting where people are invited to come and speak, that be in person. And Elizabeth, that I guess falls to you to find a large enough room. And we talked about doing that in July. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Next week, so I'm gonna look at what the planning department has a kind of hearing room in their first floor. I'm not quite sure it's big enough for the commission members to sit comfortably, although it's otherwise a good room for kind of testimony. And then I have some other ideas to call around in the Towson area. So we're prepared to figure it out. I would like some guidance on even how much social distancing commissioners would like in a setting such as this. Amongst yourself, the public will have a respectable distance.
So Elizabeth, what if we did kind of more what the planning board does, what the planning board does with the comprehensive, the CZMP process? You know, you could pick a high school centrally located, have the commissioners participate, you know, on the stage in the listening mode, provide more than enough social distancing in a high school auditorium.
Yeah, no, we can look at all kinds of options. Actually, I don't know what BCPS is doing with their facilities in public use. It's all COVID, unfortunately COVID related, but as we come out of this, I'm sure we could ask. I was going to ask Towson University too, but I just did want to get a sense. You know, you got if you want to be 6 feet apart, sitting where you're sitting, that's that dictates one approach. If you don't care if it's 6 feet versus 3 feet, so I was just getting a sense.
Sure. What everybody's thoughts on that?
Well, you said all of us are vaccinated, so I don't have a problem with the 3 feet for committee members. That's me.
I agree.
I was
Yeah,
closer.
you okay?
Yeah, I'm good with that too.
Okay, everybody okay with that? Okay, great.
Because
Right.
honestly, one other easy option potentially, if anyone, well, the councilman knows this courthouse is there's a historic courtroom at the courthouse, which is sort of interesting. No technology that I'm aware of, but it is a big space and it's quite appropriate. So that's a fallback, but at least it gives me some idea that could work from a comfort perspective. I'm going to look into this next week as an on-site matter and can report back to you next week, Phil, or whenever.
Okay. Yeah, yes, Peter.
I've been sitting in on the redistricting commission hearings over the last week or so, and they've stayed virtual. And that has some advantages for people who want to testify. They don't have to drive anywhere. They don't have to worry about parking or finding the place. Everybody who signs up gets their 3 minutes. It was set up like some of the transportation meetings are, to be listening, not answering questions or, you know, giving presentations other than, you know, welcome and the purpose we're about, et cetera. So I'm anxious to meet you all in person, but I don't know that we're really doing a service to people who might want to testify by calling this meeting, the hearing meeting, in person. I just throw that out there.
No, and that's what I meant about revisiting it, because it's, I mean, what are people's thoughts about that?
Dina makes a good point. So
Couldn't,
but maybe you could do
Yeah.
both in some manner. You know, we could be up on the dais in listening mode. Those who want to come, and then there's a big screen up for those who want to do virtual, and you just go between the two.
Right.
that makes sense. Yeah. That
Yeah,
makes a lot. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, the Department of Transportation notice I sent around was obviously just for discussion purposes, but they actually broke it up into two. They had one in person and one call in. Again, I know that technology exists. What's available in terms of an ease for in the county to be able to, again, as I think as Dan suggested, where we're all together up on a stage, those who would like to come in and address us personally, great. And then we can look over to our left or right and see a large monitor and
I can't,
see, is that doable or not doable?
I don't know. I can't commit to that right now. I mean, we're literally just moving out of virtual mode and right now, I do not have confirmation that that's doable. And I can look into it, but I don't want to make this overly complicated, I have to say. Hybrid is what we're talking about. I'm thinking it out loud. We
Yeah.
can inquire, but I don't know if the council's done hybrid even. Have they, councilman? No.
No.
But so I don't want to say yes or no, but I don't want to create expectations that it's doable.
Okay. Well, if you could find out, and then I guess the other alternative is to do, instead of saying hybrid, it's not hybrid at the same time. One's in person, one's a call-in. Whether that's more of a lift than is necessary, then we could stay with the virtual. I was just responding, at least what I recall was an interest several months back in having it be in person. Yes, Peter.
I think having 2 meetings might be overkill and a burden on everyone. One thing that seems to have worked or is working with the Redistricting Commission is these opportunities for people to testify. They're not pictured. They just get on an audio link, but they're available if someone has a question. The other thing that seems to have gotten a lot of response is the email address and for the commission, and actually soliciting on the county website input from the citizens using the email address for the commission. And so the emails come into, in this case, Tom Bostwick as the secretary for the council, or for the commission, I mean, and he distributes the emails to all of the commission members. The recommendation at last night's meeting, which Bostwick says was doable and they would implement, is to take emails, because they were getting a lot of emails on redistricting, and actually scan them and post them to the commission site, so that they, like the public testimony, which is video recorded, is available to be viewed by the public, both the verbal testimony and the written testimony.
Yes, Pete.
Well, as far as emails are concerned, if we're putting a survey out to the entire county, there's a space on there where people can give comments and everything. So wouldn't that be almost the same thing?
It certainly could be. I think as many modes of information, again, without overloading those who have to read them and gather them and organize them, I think would be helpful. But you're right, Pete. We'll just have to see what the response is. But some people are more comfortable, I suppose, these days sending an email and writing something down, or otherwise responding some other way.
We might also be getting people who are not on the survey email distribution list by providing opportunity for the public to speak.
Yes. Commissioner Walsh, I think you had your hand up.
Personally, I'm still a fan of the virtual meetings. I think COVID changed the world, and I think people just find it easier to go online as opposed to getting in my car and driving to Towson. So, my opinion.
I think it means Commissioner Walsh doesn't want any in-person meetings of the commission, but that's okay. I for one, I'm not taking that personally. It's okay. It's all right. Well, are we back on the virtual piece? The other thing I'm just, I have a feeling when this is over, I don't know what everybody will be saying about me, and that's fine. But I was harping on the interim report the first 6 months. Now I'm harping on the final report. I just think we need to get this input sooner rather than later. And so I really would like to do it in July. And I think everything is easier, although it might not have the humanity of it, if you will, of being in person, but everything is easier if it's virtual. And so maybe that's the way we ought to look at it. And I have to remember too that the county has its own rules about COVID and meeting and what everybody will do. So it sounds to me as if we are moving back to let's have this public meeting be virtual, and the audio call-in is certainly fine. Just in terms of modes and methods, I'm assuming we will be in listening mode. Happy to have the comments as opposed to a lot of back and forth. The other thing about virtual, it is people can be given their time limits, and those can be appropriately monitored. Let's put it that way. I say this as someone who's been monitored in public comment virtually, so I get it. All right, well, why don't we work from that then? And I think we ought to,
maybe Elizabeth can just, rather than us try to dictate what it is, maybe Elizabeth can find out what the resources are and we'll match to that, go the other way around on it.
I mean, virtual is the easiest. I'll be
That's
clear
fine.
on that because we've been doing it for a year. I personally, I think had said to Phil early on, I think in person for people, I thought this at the time was preferable, but I've come around to Steve's view and others. People are getting used to these virtual settings, and maybe we should embrace it here. But we will look into the physical options just to check that box and bring it back to you, but not until soon, very soon.
yeah, okay, because I really would, if we, whatever we can find out and know it for our June meeting, because I'd love to set a date at the June meeting, set the July date, get the information out. If that timetable seems to work, because I really would like to get that information in. Does that work, Elizabeth, time-wise? Will you be able to let us know? Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually going to look at a room on Tuesday, and so that's a start for me, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. And then the procurement survey, Elizabeth or Jasmine, anything to report on that in terms of timing and what we're thinking about in terms of data analysis?
Yes, so we've been coordinating with Beth with the internal public works survey. They're doing an efficiency survey for all employees. So the internal portion of the survey that you all crafted, we're going to include it in that. So that way employees aren't getting hit with more than one, right? And so we can get a good response rate. We do have a question. Let me pull it up just to get clarity on one of the questions. Here we go. So yes, do you have responsibility for aspects, contract aspects? The next one is, would you like more information about project contract management? Are we implying, would you like more training, or what are we asking them?
Thoughts? I figured it was training, but I don't want to speak for the folks who put that together.
I think that's right.
Okay, so I will then tweak that a little bit to reflect the training and get that going. For the external one, it is almost done. I sent it, OIT is building some test survey links, and then I can share that around with everyone so you all can see it. And then if it looks kosher to everybody, we'll send it out. I would like to send it out no later than next Friday, and then give folks about a week or two to complete it. And so how it'll work is we obviously have our internal list, but you all also could share. There'll be an email that you all can share to people in your orbits and in your circles for them to complete it. And so it'll be one survey for current or former Baltimore County vendors or contractors, and another link for those who have not been contractors. So that way it just jumps right to the questions they need.
Sound good?
So,
Yes.
yeah, just to make sure all on the same page. I actually, just previewing, have to jump off at 4 for a meeting with the county executive on another topic that I didn't expect. So I apologize in advance. And if it's short, I'll hop back in. So basically, I think as Jasmine noted, but I want to make sure it gets to the compilation. So because the efficiency assessment was already doing an internal workforce survey, we embedded your questions, the ones you wrote that would go to internal stakeholders. We embedded it into their survey form. And then they will be doing the compilation of those responses as part of the responses that they are asking other kinds of questions of the workforce. We just didn't want employees to get hit with 2 different things. It would ruin really both of them. That's what happened there. But just be sure, no questions were changed. They just got put in their format. And the good news is the consultants will going to do that compilation. By contrast, for all the external stakeholders, it is solely on us, me, Jasmine, and the BC Stat team to, well, our OIT department to push it out, not consultants. And then when the information comes in, our BC Stat team will do the compilation. And that's how we're doing it. It's probably less work for us at the county because the consultants are doing a piece. So I would say it's all good, but just wanted to be clear because I know Steve's asked about how it's going to get rolled up and analyzed. So it's going to be 2 different ways because we're pushing it out through 2 different projects.
All right, and then not to be pushy about it, but with respect to the efficiency assessments, collection and sorting of the data, how soon do we think we can have that? I mean, because I wouldn't want to wait till their final report is out, because then we're maybe at the end of August.
Well, they seem to want to wrap up most of their work in July.
Okay.
And have this inform, their draft, which is due 3rd week in July. So I mean, they're the ones under pressure to have it turned around, not so much the commission.
Okay.
So I'll push on it though, because I know you want to have time to digest it. I definitely appreciate that.
No, I thank you for doing that. Real quick, Elizabeth, before you have to hop off, best practices consultants, I will tell the rest of the commission, he has done a great job of finding a number of people who are potential resources, and Elizabeth and Jasmine and I were on a call with somebody from Fairfax County, and I know there's been some other work done. Is there anything further, Elizabeth, you can tell us about that? Because I really want to get a best practices person, or similar size county that's doing a good job of procurement in to talk to us.
So I think we haven't closed the loop as much as on the survey side. I'm thinking a panel would be a good idea, and that Kathy, I think it was Kathy Muse, the woman we spoke to in Northern Virginia, could definitely be an asset on a panel. But she also recommended one of the people that Peter, you had consulted to then get other names. And so honestly, some of the people you consulted, Peter, would be best on a panel, more so than their recommendations, if that makes sense to you. We can talk about it, maybe set up a call offline for anyone who's interested. And the names are escaping me. I need to go back to my email. I think it was the person in Anne Arundel County or Montgomery, one of the 2 that Kathy from Virginia said we should consult. And I noticed it was somebody you had contacted initially. So I think we've got 5 or 6, 4 or 5 people to choose from, and we should consider having a panel approach, virtual. I see Peter shaking her head. We can make that happen in July.
I'd like to, if we could. I'd like that to be July.
So I'm thinking the commission should figure out some options for dates for July, so we could issue some invites. I mean, it's sounding like July is going to be 2 virtual meetings with external people, 1 a public meeting and 2 an expert meeting. And if we could get all that packed in July, that would be a lot of accomplishment.
That would be great. Yes, Dan.
I just want to got distracted for a minute. There was something I had to deal with, but for the expert panel, I brought up Don Moeller as a person to include. He was a county executive for 8 months. He's been in county government before that for decades. I don't know what he's doing now, or even if he's in the area, but I think he could provide in my experience, I'm a very solid guy, and I think he could provide an interesting inside-outside perspective. So I would just ask, that we consider him for that list.
Yeah, well, I think his name is certainly on a list to be considered. Again, it's up to the entire commission, but I think the idea would be, what are they doing elsewhere? And maybe the former CE's perspective would be helpful at some other point in time. But what I'm interested in, I think what the commission's interested in, but people should please speak up, is the person in Fairfax, when she's very knowledgeable about this, and she's talking about the things they have done there, things that have been done elsewhere, Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, a little more forward looking. I don't know what efforts Mr. Moeller had with respect to changing up procurement, or having, studying procurement, or maybe some roadblocks he ran into trying to do something with procurement. I just don't know, and that might be interesting to find out. But I think,
I don't know what he's doing now, or even if he has any conflicts, what would make him ineligible to do. I just don't know. But he gave an interesting perspective, I think, on a broader scale, whether it's this meeting or some other time. That's just my gut feeling. But if nobody wants them but me, that's okay. I'm not going to push it. I just think he'd have an interesting perspective, given his many years in county government and a tour of duty as county executive. And my sense, he's pretty well regarded by everybody across the spectrum.
Sure. And so before we leave item 2C, anything else, additional sources, experts, anybody else? Dan, we have Mr. Moeller, any other suggestions? And again, if anybody has anything, just email me or email Elizabeth or Jasmine. So if it's all right with everybody, we'll move on to 2D, which is what I'm calling commission scheduling. We know what our June meeting is going to be. July, we're going to have the best practices panel. We'll have our public input meeting. In terms of scheduling thereafter, our people, I remember a long time ago, 2 years ago, and before that, when August meant people went on vacation. I'm not sure what people's plans are this year. My view would be we ought to have at least one meeting in August, and maybe we need two. I don't know, but I'm interested to know if will be a revolt, if that's suggested. Just trying to get some ideas, people's thoughts and plans for the rest of the summer.
For me, the sooner, if you're going to do it in August, towards the beginning of the month, because I'm out of pocket towards the end of the month.
Will you have your phone with you, Commissioner? Can't you join us by phone?
I consider my anniversary and my birthday personal holidays, so no.
You don't want us to help you celebrate? Come on. We can be a lot of fun. I may not always seem it, but we can be a lot of fun.
I need to get away. I don't know where I'm going, but like Southwest, need to get away.
We can all
know
fly
the
together,
feeling.
sit together.
I know the feeling. I'm going to be away sometime in July, and maybe a week in August. I'm not sure the August date yet, but I do know the date in July.
I'm going away in early July, but the rest is clear. I think, though, Elizabeth was also talking about getting dates from us for the July public meetings so that they can get invitations.
Yes. Okay.
So do you want us to collectively, because it is summer months and a lot of us will be traveling or away, perhaps send dates that we know are really kind of blocked out, and we're not going to meet everybody's schedule, but try to coordinate where we have the most, where we're likely to have the greatest participation. So like the rest of my colleagues, I've got some dates in July and some dates in August that are going to be challenging.
Understood. well, if everybody could send that information into, you can do, well, probably best to just send it to Elizabeth and Jasmine. And when we finish here, I'll just send a reminder email everybody to please do that. And and then they can pick some dates there. And I just want to be sure that whenever we meet as a commission, we at least have a quorum, of course, but that'd be very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Scott, for that suggestion. And then D2, the final report timeline. Again, if there's a way we could have our information gathering done by the end of September, that would be helpful. So I think, because in the event there's a little slippage and we need something in early October, we could address it and get it. And then the hard work of actually doing the drafting and editing and the like won't put us, up too tight against that November 30 deadline. So that's the goal, if that makes sense, to try to have things wrapped up in terms of information coming in by the end of September. But I'm just one of 10. I'm more than happy to hear whatever else anybody suggests or thinks would make sense. Again, stunned to silence. Well, we'll aim for the end of September and see how it goes. That is all I have on the agenda. Is there anything else anybody would like to bring up for the good of the order while we're all together?
I was looking, I sent a message to both Peter and Scott. Y'all not looking at the chat. But anyway, I will say though, I need to find out, is there a reason why are we doing a high level in the interim report? So for the MWBE, and committee members, please chime in case I missed something. The piece that talks about the sheltered program in the disparity study recommendation, it was mentioned that for contracts that are $25,000 or lower could be listed in a sheltered program. In the interim report, it just indicated that we should have a sheltered program, but it didn't indicate a dollar amount. So is there a reason for not indicating that, so that we are not being specific, or was that an oversight, or what? I just want to know. Anybody?
Would that have been an Elizabeth thing? And I do recall that discussion, Carla, and I don't recall why it was to be included or excluded. I do recall that discussion. But it's a question, since this is an interim report, we probably now can, before we get to the final, address that.
Okay. And then Peter, was there a discussion in purchasing about increasing contracts from 25 to 50 without MBE goals on it? And I asked because I know in the city, when I was there, and that was over a decade ago, we made that recommendation, and I believe it was done before I left, because it's hard to put goals on a $25,000 contract because there's not a lot of money. So I don't know if that was a discussion in purchasing procurement portion about, okay. And then, and if not, should we, and I'm looking to both Peter and then my MWBE committee, should we put something in there to talk about increasing the threshold for goals and or for a director to be able to do a quote based off of 50 versus $25,000 contract? So that's two. It's the threshold is still 25, but can it be increased to 50 for director sign off? Number one, and number two, for goals to be pushed up higher. Because some people say we shouldn't put goals on a contract until it's $100,000. And as an MBE person, I kind of agree, but I also understand from a procurement side that you could probably do some goal setting on a contract from 50 to 100,000. So I'm putting it out there to think about. Nope, it's not going to go in the interim, but I think this is something we can talk about because it crosses several subcommittees.
And I would like input from Carla and Rose as well on that, getting down to the nitty gritty, but good
Okay.
point.
Okay, so what I'll do is send an email to Carla and Rose and CC you and our MBE committee and see what they say.
We have to remember too that there may be some legal issues with that too. I mean, I don't know what, if the dollar amounts are fixed legally. I know they are in the state. I don't know how the county has it set up as far as, the.
Scott, to your knowledge, is there anything in the code or the manual that talks about dollar thresholds? Because if so, we can address that too.
That's what I'm saying. I think we need a little bit of legal counsel on that as well. And I would like to caution too, some of these smaller projects where, to try and increase goals, and I've seen it, and I've talked to many contractors, MBE and otherwise, when they're smaller contracts, they're more narrowly tailored. So to try and increase a goal on a very narrowly tailored contract is very, very difficult. So, and unless you're a real good person at setting specific type goals on specific projects, it becomes very burdensome.
So my answer is, I don't recall.
Okay.
I have to look at that.
Okay, well, that'd be great if you guys follow up. And then again, we'll collect the legal questions to tee up and get those out and get them answered.
So the legal question is, should I go through Jasmine and Elizabeth for them to ask legal? Okay, thank you,
Yeah, I think that
Jasmine.
makes sense. Unless, and I'll talk to Elizabeth, whether it needs to be something that comes from me on behalf of the commission, but let's have Elizabeth and Jasmine collect them. And then we'll figure out the right vehicle. I just want to do what's going to be efficient and get us to the answers, but.
So I'll loop you in the email too, and then I'll just do a 1, 2, and 3, and yeah. Okay, thanks.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Phil, this is Wade.
Yes, sir.
It's in the 25,000 is in the code.
In the code.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
So Wade, with that, how would county council feel about increasing that?
I mean, you've kind of just hit me with it. I don't really know how to answer that. I'm sorry, I just can't decide. But one of the things I can do is, talk to some of them and see what kind of reaction we get to that. So I have no idea.
Okay.
But I can try to find out for you.
Great, thank you. Anything else, anyone? Well, with that, I thank you again for your time and your collegiality, and we'll see each other on June 28th. I'll send an email tonight, just reminding everybody to please send their avoid dates, if you will, for July and August in terms of meetings of the commission. And then Elizabeth and Jasmine can help us schedule from there. And I'll also, probably over the weekend, send a list of some suggested subcommittees and ask for volunteers. And I think we are otherwise ready to adjourn. Again, one last time for the good of the order, anything? Okay, well, thank you all very much. Pleasure as always.
Thank
and
you.
We'll see you soon.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.